Harper pushed through the clinic doors with Willow balanced on her hip, the little girl's fever burning through her pink dress. 3 other mothers sat in plastic chairs, their children coughing and whimpering. She signed the clipboard and sat down, bouncing Willow gently while humming the lullaby her grandmother taught her. "Next patient, please." She stood and walked toward the examination room, passing a man in the hallway who moved aside for her. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Her stomach dropped to the floor. Dan Wu. He looked the same but different, sharper edges, darker shadows under his eyes, an expensive watch that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. His hair was styled back, instead of falling into his eyes like it used to when they'd wake up together in their tiny apartment. "Yeah, Harper." His voice cracked on her name. She didn't stop walking. Couldn't. Her legs carried her forward into the examination room, where the doctor waited with the thermometer and stethoscope. The door closed behind her, but she could feel him standing there on the other side, probably frozen in shock, just like she was melting into panic. The doctor examined Willow, while Harper's mind raced through calculations. She'd moved to Abuja specifically because it was far enough from where they used to live. She'd changed her phone number twice. She'd made herself invisible. "Just a throat infection," the doctor said, writing a prescription. "Antibiotics should clear it up in 5 days." Harper nodded and took the paper with shaking hands. Maybe he'd be gone when she opened the door. Maybe he'd think he imagined her. Maybe. She stepped into the hallway, and he was right there, leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "I have nothing to say to you." She adjusted Willow on her hip and moved toward the exit. He followed. Of course he followed. "Please, just 5 minutes. You signed the papers. We're done." She pushed through the main doors into the parking lot, where her old car sat baking in the afternoon sun. "I didn't know about her." His words stopped her cold. She turned slowly, searching his face for any sign of deception. "What are you talking about?" "The child. She looks like... How old is she?" "Don't." Harper's voice came out sharp as broken glass. "Don't you dare." "Is she mine?" The question hung in the air between them, like a live wire. Harper wanted to lie, but her face had never been good at hiding the truth. His eyes widened as he read her silence like a book. "You kept this from me for 3 years?" His voice rose, and several people in the parking lot turned to stare. "You were already gone," she hissed. "You chose that life over us. You think I wanted to raise a baby while wondering if you'd come home in a body bag?" His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" She laughed, but it sounded like crying. "You disappeared for weeks at a time. You came home with blood on your shirts. You had men calling at midnight speaking in code. What was I supposed to do? Wait around while you played gangster? I was trying to protect you. By lying, by keeping secrets, by making me fall asleep every night, wondering if you were alive or dead." Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "I filed for divorce because I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't bring a child into that world. If you're already this invested, you're my kind of person. Drop a comment, like, and subscribe. I drop stories like this regularly, and you don't want to miss them. Comment whether you think this ends in tragedy or triumph. Then keep reading to find out if you're right. Share this with someone who loves a story that grabs them from the first sentence. Now keep going. It only gets more intense from here." Dan Wu ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "If I had known, nothing would have changed. you'd still be doing whatever it is you do. You'd still be putting yourself in danger. And now you'd be putting her in danger too. Willow whimpered against her shoulder, and Harper realized she'd been holding the little girl too tightly. She forced herself to relax, to breathe, to remember why she'd left in the first place. "I'm out," Danwoo said suddenly. "I left that life 6 months ago." She stared at him. "You're lying." "I'm not. Something happened that made me realize I couldn't keep going. So I got out." He took a step closer, his eyes pleading. "I've been looking for you ever since. I wanted to apologize, to explain everything, to what? Win me back? Make everything okay?" She shook her head. "You can't just erase 3 years of pain because you suddenly decided to grow a conscience." "I know that. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking you to let me explain." "No." "Harper." "No." She fumbled with her car keys, nearly dropping them. "Stay away from us. I mean it." She buckled Willow into the car seat and drove away without looking back. But she could see him in the rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot watching her leave, just like she'd watched him leave 100 times before. Her apartment felt too small when she finally got home. She gave Willow the medicine and put her down for a nap, then sat on the couch, staring at the wall. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the 4th call, she answered. "Stop calling me. I found you once." Danwoo's voice came through the speaker. "I can find you again, but I'd rather you just meet me tomorrow. One conversation. That's all I'm asking." "How did you get this number? Does it matter?" "Yes. Because if you're still connected to those people, then everything you said was a lie." He was quiet for a moment. "I have resources. That doesn't mean I'm still involved in the business." "Same thing." "It's not. Harper, please. Tomorrow at the park near the clinic. 2 o'clock. If you don't show up, I'll respect your decision and you'll never hear from me again." She wanted to say no. She should have said no. But instead she heard herself whisper, "Fine, 2 o'clock, but I'm not bringing Willow." "That's fair." She hung up and pressed her palms against her eyes. What was she doing? Why was she giving him another chance to hurt her? But somewhere deep in the part of her heart that still remembered loving him, she knew she needed closure. Real closure. Not just signed papers and 3 years of silence. The next day she left Willow with her neighbor, Mrs. Franklin, who loved babysitting and never asked uncomfortable questions. She drove to the park and found Danwoo sitting on a bench under a mango tree, wearing jeans and a simple shirt that made him look more like the man she'd married and less like the stranger from yesterday. "You came," he said, standing as she approached. "I shouldn't have." She sat on the opposite end of the bench, keeping distance between them. "Say what you need to say." He sat back down and looked at his hands. "I never wanted that life. You know that, right?" "Then why?" "My father owed money. A lot of money to very dangerous people. When he died, those debts became mine." He glanced at her. "I tried to pay them back legitimately, but the interest kept growing faster than I could earn. So they offered me a deal. Work for them, and the debt disappears." Harper's chest squeezed like lemon. "You never told me any of this." "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could handle it on my own. Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now." His voice cracked. "Like I'm a stranger." "You are a stranger. The man I married wouldn't have kept secrets, wouldn't have lied about where he was going or what he was doing. The man you married was naive enough to think he could have both, you and survival. I learned pretty quickly that wasn't possible." She watched a mother push her toddler on the swings nearby, their laughter floating across the playground. And that could have been her and Danwoo with Willow. Should have been. So what changed? Why did you get out? Danwoo was quiet for so long she thought maybe he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I watched someone die. Someone who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I realized that could be you someday. Could be anyone I cared about. The money wasn't worth it. The power wasn't worth it. Nothing was worth living with that kind of blood on my hands. Did you? She couldn't finish the question. No, I never hurt anyone directly. But I helped move things, hide things, arrange meetings. I was part of the machine even if I wasn't pulling triggers. He turned to face her fully. I'm not asking you to absolve me. I know what I did was wrong. I'm just trying to explain why I did it and why I stopped. 6 months, she said softly. You've been out for 6 months and you're still alive. They really let you go? I paid my way out, took every bit of money I'd saved, and then some. But yes, I'm free, completely. She wanted to believe him. Every cell in her body wanted to believe him. But trust wasn't something you could just turn back on like a light switch. What do you want from me, Danwoo? I want to know my daughter. I want a chance to be her father, even if I can't be your husband anymore. His eyes were red-rimmed, but no tears fell. I want to prove to you that I'm different now. Better. The man you deserved all along. She doesn't know you. She's never asked about her father, because I told her he had to go away for work and might not come back. He flinched like she'd slapped him. That's probably for the best. Oh, at least you didn't make me into a villain. I didn't have to. You did that yourself. The words came out harsher than she meant, but she didn't take them back. He needed to hear the truth, needed to understand the weight of what he'd thrown away. So what now? He asked. Do I just walk away? Pretend I never saw you? Harper closed her eyes and thought about Willow, about how the little girl sometimes watched other children with their fathers at the playground and got quiet, about how she deserved to know where she came from, even if the story wasn't perfect. I need time to think. This is all happening too fast. Okay, I can give you time. He pulled out a business card and held it toward her. This is my number, my only number. I don't work for anyone anymore. I run a legitimate security consultation business now. Background checks. Safety systems for offices. Boring stuff. Clean stuff. She took the card and studied it. Lee Danwoo, founder and CEO, Safeguard Solutions. The address listed was in a business district on the other side of the city. This is real? Started it 4 months ago. It's small but growing. Turns out people value security expertise when it comes from someone who knows how the other side operates. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Redemption through capitalism. Who knew? Despite everything, she almost smiled back. Almost. I'll call you. Maybe. I don't know. That's more than I deserve. He stood and she did too, both of them awkward and uncertain like teenagers after a first date instead of divorced partners, with a child together. Take care of yourself, Harper. And thank you for raising her alone. I know that couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. She turned and walked away before her resolve could crack, before she could do something stupid like ask him if he still drank his coffee black, or if he still hummed old songs while cooking dinner. Those details didn't matter anymore. Couldn't matter. She picked up Willow from Mrs. Franklin's apartment and drove home in silence. The little girl chattered about the cookies they'd baked and the cartoons they'd watched, oblivious to the earthquake that had just reshaped her mother's world. That night, after Willow fell asleep, Harper sat at her kitchen table staring at Danwoo's business card. She could throw it away. Should throw it away. But instead she pulled out her laptop and searched for safeguard solutions. The website was professional and clean. Client testimonials praised their thoroughness and discretion. There were photos of Danwoo in a suit shaking hands with various business owners. He looked legitimate, successful. Nothing like the haunted man who used to come home at dawn smelling of cigarette smoke and fear. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Amelia. "You've been quiet. Everything okay?" Harper typed back. "Ran into Danwoo yesterday. He knows about Willow." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "What?" "Call me right now." She dialed, and Amelia answered before the first ring finished. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." Harper told her everything while pacing the small living room. About the clinic, the parking lot confrontation, the phone calls, the park meeting. All of it spilled out in a rushed whisper so she wouldn't wake Willow in the next room. "So let me get this straight," Amelia said when she finished. "He says he's out of the criminal life. He's running a legitimate business, and he wants to be a father. Do you believe him?" "I don't know what I believe anymore. But do you want to believe him?" That was the real question, wasn't it? The one that kept her up at night. Part of me does. The part that remembers who he was before everything went wrong. But the other part, the part that survived the divorce and the single motherhood and the endless fear, that part says, "I'm being an idiot, even considering this." "You're not an idiot," Amelia said gently. "You're a mother who wants her daughter to have a father. That's normal. But you need to protect yourself too, and protect Willow. If he's even slightly connected to that old life." "I know. Trust me, I know." Harper sank onto the couch and pulled a blanket over her legs. "I told him I needed time to think." "Good. Take all the time you need. And maybe, I don't know, do some investigating? See if his story checks out." After they hung up, Harper couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way Danwoo had looked at her in the parking lot. Like she was water and he'd been dying of thirst. Like seeing her had rearranged something fundamental inside him. She'd seen that look before, on their wedding day, when she'd walked down the makeshift aisle in her mother's garden, wearing a simple white dress and carrying wildflowers. "Stop it," she told herself. "Stop romanticizing the past. He destroyed your trust. He chose crime over family. He doesn't get to just waltz back in because he suddenly grew a conscience." But then she thought about Willow, about how the little girl deserved a chance to know her father if he was genuinely trying to change, about how complicated and messy love could be even when you desperately wanted it to be simple. The next morning she called her friend Ariana, who worked as a private investigator for a law firm. "I need you to look into someone for me, quietly." "Who?" "My ex-husband." Ariana whistled low. "This should be interesting. Send me his details." Harper forwarded Danwoo's business information and waited. 3 days passed, with no word. She went to work at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, took care of Willow, did laundry, made dinner, all the ordinary things that felt impossible to focus on. Her mind kept drifting to questions she couldn't answer. On the 4th day, Ariana called. "You sitting down?" "Should I be?" "Maybe." So I dug into Lee Danwoo, and honestly, his story checks out. He was involved with some seriously bad people about 2 years ago. Then 6 months ago, he liquidated everything, paid off what appears to be a massive settlement, and walked away clean. No arrests, no outstanding warrants, no current connections to criminal organizations that I can find. Harper's hand tightened around her phone. You're sure? As sure as I can be, without having access to classified intelligence files. His business is registered properly, pays taxes, has legitimate clients. He's either completely clean or the best criminal I've ever investigated. Ariana paused. But here's the interesting part. Someone tried to kill him 3 months ago. What? Yeah. Shooting outside his office building. 2 men with guns. Security footage shows Danwoo fought them off and they ran. Police investigated but never made any arrests. My guess is whoever he paid off to leave wasn't the only person unhappy about his departure. Harper's stomach twisted. Is he still in danger? Hard to say. There hasn't been another incident since. Could have been a warning that he heeded. Could have been a one-time thing. Or could be that they're waiting for the right moment to try again. Ariana's voice softened. Look, I know you have history with this guy, but if you're thinking about letting him back into your life, you need to know that danger might come with him, even if he's not actively seeking it out anymore. After they hung up, Harper sat in her car outside the hospital and tried to process everything. Danwoo had been telling the truth. He was out, but he'd also almost died for it. Did she really want to bring that kind of potential violence near her daughter? Her phone rang. Danwoo's name flashed on the screen. She'd saved his number without really meaning to. Hello? I know you said you needed time, he started, but I was wondering if maybe I could see her, just from a distance. I wouldn't approach or anything. I want to see what she looks like when she's not sick. Everything in Harper screamed that this was a bad idea, but she heard herself saying, Saturday, the playground at Victory Park. We'll be there at 10 in the morning. You can watch from wherever, but don't come near us. I need to figure out how to explain this to her first. Thank you. His voice broke on the words. You don't know what this means to me. Don't make me regret it. Saturday morning, she dressed Willow in purple overalls and braided her hair into 2 puffs. The little girl bounced with excitement about going to the big park with the tall slides. Harper's hands shook as she tied her shoes. They arrived at the playground and Willow ran immediately toward the swings. Harper pushed her gently while scanning the area. She spotted Danwoo sitting on a bench near the fountain, far enough away to be unobtrusive, but close enough to see clearly. He wore sunglasses and a baseball cap like he was trying to be invisible. Willow played for an hour, completely unaware of the man watching her every move. She went down slides and climbed on monkey bars and made friends with 2 other children building a sandcastle. Harper kept glancing at Danwoo, watching him watch their daughter. His expression was devastating. Pure joy mixed with profound grief for all the moments he'd already missed. When Willow got tired, Harper bought her ice cream from a vendor, and they sat at a picnic table. That's when Willow noticed the man on the bench. Mama, that man is staring at us. Harper's heart stopped. Is he? Yeah, he's been there the whole time. Do you know him? This was it. The moment of truth. Harper could lie and say no, could pack up and leave and never contact Danwoo again, or she could be brave. Actually, so, yes, I do know him. Who is he? Someone from a long time ago, someone I used to know very well. She took a deep breath. Baby, you know how you sometimes ask about your daddy? Willow's eyes went wide. Is that him? Yes. The little girl turned to stare at Danwoo with new intensity. He'd gone completely still, probably realizing they were talking about him. Why doesn't he come say hello? Because it's complicated. He's been gone for a very long time, and we're trying to figure out if it's safe for you 2 to meet. Safe? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that affect other people. Your daddy made some mistakes and he's been working very hard to fix them. but I need to make sure everything is really okay before I introduce you properly." Willow thought about this while licking her ice cream. Then she waved at Danwoo. Just a simple little wave. His hand came up slowly and waved back. "He looks sad," Willow said quietly. "He is sad. He missed a lot of time with you." "Is that why you're sad sometimes too?" Harper's eyes burned. "Yeah, baby. That's exactly why." They finished their ice cream and left the park. As they walked to the car, Harper glanced back and saw Danwoo still sitting there, head in his hands. She almost turned around, almost went to comfort him. But she kept walking because she wasn't ready yet. Wasn't sure if she'd ever be ready. That night, Willow asked 100 questions about her father. What was his favorite color? Did he like animals? Was he funny? Could she meet him soon? Harper answered what she could and deflected the rest, promising they'd figure it out together. She texted Danwoo before bed. "She saw you. She waved. She has questions." His response came immediately. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, and that you made mistakes, but you're trying to fix them. That I need to make sure it's safe." "And is it? Safe?" Harper thought about Ariana's warning about the shooting, about the life he'd left behind, and the enemies who might still want revenge. "I don't know yet." "Fair enough. Thank you for letting me see her today. She's beautiful. She has your smile. She has your eyes." "Does she?" "I couldn't tell from that far away." "Dark brown. Serious when she's thinking. They crinkle at the corners when she laughs." There was a long pause before he replied. "I wish I'd been there to see them change from newborn blue." "So do I." She meant it. Despite everything, despite the anger and pain and fear, part of her genuinely wished things had been different. Wished he'd been brave enough to tell her the truth from the beginning. He wished they'd faced his father's debts together, instead of him trying to shoulder the burden alone. 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Danwoo texted occasionally with updates about his business or random thoughts about Willow, but they didn't meet in person. Harper was still trying to decide what to do when fate made the decision for her. She was leaving the hospital after a night shift when 2 men approached her in the parking garage. They didn't look threatening exactly, just purposeful. "You're Harper? Lee Danwoo's ex-wife?" Her keys dug into her palm. "Who's asking?" "Friends of your husband." The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We heard he has a daughter now. Congratulations." Fear poured ice water through her veins. "What do you want?" "Just passing along a message. Danwoo thinks he can leave the family and start fresh. But blood debts don't wash away that easily. We know where you work. We know where you live. We know your daughter goes to Little Stars daycare on weekdays." He stepped closer. "Tell Danwoo that his freedom has a price. And if he doesn't pay it, we'll collect from his family instead." They walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the maze of parked cars. Harper stood frozen for a full minute before her hands started shaking so badly she dropped her keys. She called Danwoo immediately. "They found me," she said when he answered. 2 men. They threatened Willow." "What?" She heard crashing sounds like he'd knocked something over. "Where are you right now?" "Hospital parking garage. They're gone. But Danwoo, they know everything. Where we live. Where Willow goes to school. Where I work. Everything. Don't go home. Do you hear me? Don't go anywhere near your apartment. Take Willow and go to your sister's house. I'll meet you there." "How do you know where my sister lives?" "I know where everyone you love lives. I needed to make sure they were safe in case something like this happened." His voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "Please, Harper, trust me on this. Just get Willow and go to Amelia's. I'll explain everything when I get there." She picked up Willow from daycare, making up an excuse about a family emergency. The little girl sensed her mother's fear and went quiet, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. They drove to Amelia's house across the city, and Harper kept checking the rearview mirror for cars following them. Amelia opened the door, looking confused. "What's going on? We need to stay here for a bit. Don't ask questions yet, please." They'd barely gotten inside when Dan Wu pulled up in a black car Harper had never seen before. He knocked urgently, and Amelia let him in, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm when she saw his face. "Who were they?" Harper demanded. "What do they want?" Dan Wu looked at Willow, who was watching everything with wide eyes. "Can she go play in another room?" Amelia took the hint. "Come on, sweetie. Let's find some toys in my bedroom." Once they were alone, Dan Wu paced like a caged animal. "I thought I'd paid enough. I thought the settlement would cover everything, but apparently there's a faction that wasn't included in the deal. They want more money, or they want me back. How much more? More than I have. More than I can get without going back to illegal work." He stopped pacing and looked at her. "I won't do that. I won't go back to that life, which means we need to find another solution." "We?" Harper's voice rose. "There is no we. This is your problem. Your past catching up with you. Don't drag me and Willow into your mess. I never wanted to drag you into anything. That's why I left in the first place." He ran his hands through his hair, making it stick up in all directions. "But they're using you to get to me now, which means whether you like it or not, you're involved. So what do we do?" "I have a friend. Someone I trust who's dealt with situations like this before. He can help us disappear for a while. New identities, new city, new everything. Usually just until I figure out how to handle this permanently." Harper laughed, but it sounded hysterical. "You want me to uproot my entire life? Leave my job, my home, my family? Because you can't handle your own consequences. I want you to live. I want Willow to live. Nothing else matters." His eyes were desperate. "I know I have no right to ask this of you. I know I destroyed any claim I had to your trust. But I'm begging you, let me protect you both. Please." Amelia came back into the room with Willow trailing behind her. "She wants her mama." Willow ran to Harper and buried her face in her mother's stomach. "I'm scared. Those men you're talking about, are they bad?" Harper met Dan Wu's eyes over their daughter's head. In that moment she saw everything. His regret, his fear, his desperate love for a child he barely knew. And she made a decision that terrified her. "Yes, baby, they're bad, but your daddy is going to keep us safe." Willow turned to look at Dan Wu. "You're really my daddy?" He crouched down to her level, his voice gentle. "Yes, I'm really your daddy, and I'm so sorry I haven't been here until now. But I promise, I'm not going anywhere ever again." "Okay." She studied him seriously. "Do you like ice cream?" Despite everything, he smiled. "I love ice cream." "Good. Mama says we can't trust people who don't like ice cream." "That's a very wise rule." Harper watched them together and felt her heart crack open in a way that was both painful and necessary. This was real. They were really in danger, and she was really about to trust the man who'd broken her heart to save their lives. Dan Wu's friend turned out to be a woman named Aisha, who ran some kind of underground network, helping people escape dangerous situations. She arrived at Amelia's house 3 hours later with fake documents, burner phones, and a plan. "You'll go to Cotonou," Aisha explained, spreading a map on the kitchen table. "I have contacts there who can set you up with temporary housing and work. You'll be Funmi and Kofi Adebayo, a married couple who just relocated for business. Your daughter's name will be Yetunde." Married couple? Harper shook her head. We're divorced. Doesn't matter. The story is simpler if you're together. Less questions. Eshi looked between them. Can you pretend to be married for a few months? Danwoo's expression was unreadable. If that's what it takes. I have a condition, Harper said suddenly. I'm not changing Willow's name. She's 3 years old. She knows who she is. Confusing her with a new identity could traumatize her. It's a security risk. I don't care. That's my condition. Eshi sighed. Fine. But you'll need to be extra careful. Kids talk. They say things without meaning to. They left that night with just 2 suitcases and whatever cash Danwoo had managed to withdraw. Emilia cried as they hugged goodbye. Call me when you can, even if it's just to let me know you're alive. The apartment in Cotonou was small but clean, tucked above a fabric shop in a busy market district. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen the size of a closet. Harper put Willow to bed in the smaller bedroom, while Danwoo stood awkwardly in the living room, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to stay. You can take the couch, she said when she came back out. I can get a hotel. With what money? We need to conserve what we have until you figure out the job Eshi mentioned. She pulled sheets and a blanket from the tiny linen closet. Besides, if we're supposed to be married, then you living somewhere else defeats the whole purpose. They worked in tense silence to make up the couch. Their hands brushed accidentally, and both of them jerked away like they'd been burned. This was going to be harder than Harper had anticipated. Living in close quarters with someone who used to know every inch of her body, and now felt like a stranger. That first week was brutal. Willow kept asking questions about why they'd moved, when they could go home, where Aunt Emilia was. Danwoo started his new job as a security consultant for a shipping company, while Harper looked for nursing work that wouldn't require extensive credential verification. They learned to navigate around each other in the small space, developed routines, pretended everything was normal, but nothing was normal. One night Harper woke to find Danwoo standing at the window, staring out at the street below. Can't sleep? She asked softly. He turned, startled. Sorry, did I wake you? No, the heat did. She joined him at the window. What are you looking for? Cars that stay too long, people who appear multiple times, patterns that don't belong. He rubbed his eyes. I keep thinking they'll find us, that I didn't cover our tracks well enough. Eshi is good at what she does. We're safe here. You don't know that. You can't know that. His voice was rough with exhaustion. Every time I close my eyes, I see those men approaching you in the parking garage. I see them hurting you or Willow, and I can't breathe. Without thinking, Harper reached out and touched his arm. We're okay. We're all okay. He looked down at her hand on his arm, like it was a miracle. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not. But you're getting it anyway, because that's what people do when they're in impossible situations together. She pulled her hand back. Get some sleep. You have work in the morning. But he caught her wrist gently before she could walk away. Harper, I need you to know something. Everything I did, every stupid, selfish choice I made, I'd take it all back if I could. I'd choose differently. I'd choose you. Her eyes stung. But you didn't. You chose wrong, and now we're here. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, if you'll let me. I don't want your guilt. I don't want your regrets. I just want to get through this and get back to some version of normal. She pulled away from his grip. Good night, Danwoo. She lay awake in her bed for hours after that, staring at the ceiling and listening to him toss and turn on the couch. Everything was tangled and complicated, and she didn't know how to feel anymore. Angry, sad, scared, hopeful. All of it at once, probably. A month passed, then two. Dan Wu's job was going well, and he started bringing home a steady paycheck. Harper found part-time work at a local clinic. Willow adjusted to her new surroundings with the resilience of childhood. They fell into a rhythm that almost felt like family. Dan Wu taught Willow how to ride the second-hand bicycle he'd bought from a neighbor. Harper cooked dinners that they ate together at the small table. They played board games in the evenings and read bedtime stories and did all the ordinary things that married people with children did. Except they weren't married anymore, and the whole situation was held together by fear and necessity rather than love. Or was it? Harper caught herself watching Dan Wu more and more. The way he was gentle with Willow, never pushing too hard, but always present. The way he'd leave little notes around the apartment, thanking her for things, for making coffee, for folding his laundry, for giving him a second chance at fatherhood. The way he never presumed anything, never tried to touch her or cross the invisible boundaries she'd established. "You're staring again," Emilia said during one of their weekly phone calls from a secure line Ishi had set up. "I am not." "Yes, you are. I can hear it in your voice. You're falling for him again." "That's ridiculous. We're just coexisting. That's all. Harper, I've known you my whole life. You can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to me." Emilia's voice softened. "It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to want to forgive him. But what if I forgive him and then something else happens? What if this is all temporary and he goes back to being the person who hurt me? Then you deal with it. But you can't live your whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop. At some point you have to decide if you believe people can change or if you're going to let the past poison your future." The turning point came 3 months into their new life when Willow got sick again. Nothing serious, just a stomach bug, but she was miserable and clingy. Harper stayed home from work to take care of her while Dan Wu insisted on leaving his job early to help. They took turns sitting with her, bringing water and crackers, reading stories, until she fell asleep. Late that night, they ended up on the couch together, both exhausted. Willow was finally sleeping peacefully in her room. The apartment was quiet except for the sounds of the city filtering through the windows. "Thank you," Dan Wu said quietly, "for letting me be here for this, for letting me be her father." "You are her father. Biology doesn't change just because you weren't there before." "I know, but you could have kept her from me. After everything I did, you would have been justified." He turned to look at her in the dim light. "Why didn't you?" Harper thought about this carefully. "Because I remember who you were before. The man who stayed up all night helping me study for nursing exams. The man who made me breakfast every Sunday and always burned the toast, but I ate it anyway, because he tried so hard. The man who cried when I told him I was pregnant, because he was so happy and so scared at the same time." She met his eyes. That man deserved a chance to know his daughter, even if the other version, the criminal version, didn't. What if they're the same person? What if I can't separate the good from the bad? Then you work on it every day. You choose to be better every day. That's all any of us can do. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm still in love with you. I know I have no right to say that. I know it's not what you want to hear. But it's the truth, and I'm tired of hiding it." Harper's heart hammered against her ribs. "Dan Wu." "You don't have to say anything back. I'm not expecting reciprocation. I just needed you to know." He started to stand, but she grabbed his hand. "Wait, I don't know what I feel yet. Part of me is still so angry at you for everything, for the lies and the danger and the wasted years. But another part," she swallowed hard, Another part remembers what it was like to love you and wonders if maybe we could find our way back to that. We can take it slow as you need. Glacially slow. It's like continental drift slow. He smiled for the first time in weeks. I can do continental drift. They sat there holding hands in the dark, and it felt like a beginning. Not a grand romantic gesture or a dramatic reunion. Just two people who'd been broken by life deciding to maybe try gluing some pieces back together. The next morning, Danwoo got a call that changed everything. Eshi had news. The men who'd threatened them had been arrested in an unrelated operation. A massive police sweep had taken down several criminal organizations at once, and the specific faction targeting Danwoo was gone. They were safe. They could go home. When? Harper asked. Whenever you want. I can have new documents ready in 2 days. Willow was thrilled at the thought of seeing Aunt Amelia again. She packed her stuffed animals immediately and made Harper promise they could go back to her old daycare. But that night when Willow was asleep, Danwoo and Harper sat at the kitchen table and looked at each other. Do you want to go back? He asked. I don't know. Part of me does, but we've built something here. Not much, but it's ours. She traced patterns on the table with her finger. What about you? I'll go wherever you go. My business can operate from anywhere. My life is wherever you and Willow are. That's a lot of pressure to put on me. I know. Sorry. He reached across the table but stopped short of touching her. I guess what I'm really asking is, when we go back, do we go back to being divorced? Or do we try being something else? Like what? Like co-parents who live together? Friends who used to be married? See, people who are figuring things out? He looked vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. I'm not asking you to remarry me tomorrow. I know that's not realistic. But maybe we don't have to completely split up either. Harper thought about the past 3 months, about how they'd learned to work together, to trust each other in small ways, to build a tiny foundation of something that might eventually become strong. Okay. Okay, we try. We go back home and we see if this, whatever this is, can survive real life. Not just running and hiding, but actual normal everyday life. She held up a hand. But I'm keeping my own bedroom, and we're going to therapy. Both of us individually and together. And if at any point you lie to me or keep secrets or make me feel unsafe, I'm done. No second chances. Deal. His smile could have lit up the city. Thank you. You won't regret this. I might. But I'm willing to risk it. They moved back to Abuja a week later. Emilia screamed when she saw them pull up to her house and nearly tackled them all in a group hug. I missed you so much. Don't ever disappear like that again. We'll try not to, Harper said dryly. Settling back into their old life was harder than expected. Harper got her job back at the hospital, but everything felt different now. She'd seen what danger looked like up close. She'd learned that stability was an illusion. She'd discovered that the heart could hold anger and love at the same time without imploding. Danwoo found a larger apartment for them. 3 bedrooms, so everyone had their own space, in a building with good security. They enrolled Willow in a new school closer to home. They started therapy like Harper had demanded, and slowly, carefully, they began rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy. There were arguments about boundaries and expectations. There were days when Harper looked at Danwoo and only saw the man who'd abandoned her. There were nights when old fears crept in, and she wondered if this was all a terrible mistake. But there were also good moments. Moments when Willow laughed at one of Danwoo's terrible jokes, and Harper couldn't help smiling. Moments when he brought her coffee, exactly how she liked it, without being asked. Moments when she caught him looking at her the way he used to, like she was the entire universe, condensed into one person. 6 months after returning home, they were having dinner together when Willow announced, "Sarah at school says her parents kiss all the time. Do you two ever kiss?" Harper nearly choked on her rice. Danwoo's eyes went wide. That's a complicated question, sweetie." "Why? You're married, aren't you?" "Not exactly," Harper said carefully. "We used to be married, but then we weren't for a while, and now we're working on being friends again. But you live together, and you take care of me together, and sometimes I hear you laughing together late at night. Isn't that what married people do?" "Yes, but marriage is more than just those things. It requires trust and commitment and—" "Do you trust Daddy now?" Harper looked at Danwoo. His expression was open, vulnerable, waiting for her answer without trying to influence it. "Yeah," she said slowly. "Yeah, I think I do." "And does Daddy trust you?" "More than anything," Danwoo said quietly. "Then why aren't you married?" "Because—" Harper searched for words a 3-year-old would understand. "Because sometimes people need time to heal before they can be together the right way. We're still healing." "Oh." Willow thought about this while pushing peas around her plate. "Does healing take a long time?" "Sometimes, but it's worth it." That night after Willow went to bed, Danwoo knocked on Harper's bedroom door. "Can we talk?" She let him in, and they sat on opposite ends of her bed. About what Willow said. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "I know we're not there yet, but I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here, waiting, hoping, loving you from whatever distance you need." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "I'm trying to. Every single day I'm trying to be the man you deserved from the beginning." "You're doing a good job." She reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for giving me a chance I didn't earn." They sat like that for a while, holding hands in the quiet. It wasn't everything, but it was something. It was hope. It was possibility. It was two people who'd been shattered finding out they could still fit together if they were careful enough with the sharp edges. A year after that night in the clinic parking lot, Harper woke up on a Saturday morning to the smell of burning toast. She smiled and got out of bed. She padding into the kitchen where Danwoo was frantically waving a towel at the smoke detector while Willow giggled. "You're supposed to watch it," Harper said, taking over the toast duty. "I got distracted." He grinned sheepishly. "Willow was telling me about the field trip." They made breakfast together while their daughter chattered about everything and nothing. And standing there in their kitchen with flour on her shirt and Danwoo's arm, brushing hers as he reached for plates, Harper realized she was happy, genuinely, completely, unexpectedly happy. Later that day, she called Amelia. "I think I'm ready." Ready for what? To forgive him, to really try again, to stop waiting for everything to fall apart, and just be. Amelia's voice was warm. "I'm proud of you. That takes real courage." Or real stupidity. Haven't decided which yet. Maybe both. The best things usually are. So, that's how you rebuild a life after it falls apart. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through burnt toast and late-night conversations, and choosing trust over fear every single day. Harper and Danwoo never officially remarried, but they built something stronger than paperwork anyway. They built a family from broken pieces and made it beautiful. 3 years had passed since that morning with the burnt toast, and Harper thought they'd finally found their rhythm. Willow was 6 now, losing teeth and asking impossible questions about everything. Dan Wu's security business had expanded to 3 other cities. Harper had been promoted to head nurse in the pediatric ward. Life was good, stable, normal. And then Dan Wu's phone rang at 2 in the morning. Harper heard him stumble out of bed in the next room, heard his voice low and urgent. She got up and found him in the living room, face pale in the glow of his laptop screen. "What's wrong?" He looked up and she saw genuine fear in his eyes. "My brother is here, in Abuja. He wants to meet." "I didn't know you had a brother." "I don't talk about him because he's complicated. His name is Ji-sung and he never left the life I escaped from. Actually, he climbed higher in the organization after I got out." Dan Wu ran his hands over his face. "He says he has information I need to hear. Something about the arrest 3 years ago, about the men who threatened you." "What about them?" "He wouldn't say over the phone. He wants to meet tomorrow at noon. Public place. Just the 2 of us." Harper's chest tightened with old familiar fear. This could be a trap. I know. But what if it's not? What if there's something we missed? He looked at her. "I need to go. I need to know if we're really safe or if we've just been living in borrowed time." The next day, Harper took off work and stayed home with Willow, checking her phone every 5 minutes. Dan Wu had promised to text her every 30 minutes, so she'd know he was okay. The first text came right on schedule. "Meeting him now. Restaurant is crowded. Feel safe." 30 minutes later, "He's telling me things about the arrests. Something doesn't add up." Then nothing. 30 minutes passed. 45. An hour. Harper called his phone and it went straight to voicemail. She called again and again. Panic started climbing up her throat like acid. Or she was about to call Ishi when Dan Wu walked through the front door looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 hours. "We need to talk." Willow was watching cartoons in her room, so they sat at the kitchen table. Dan Wu's hands were shaking. "The men who threatened you 3 years ago, they weren't arrested in that police sweep. They were killed, executed, by Ji-sung's faction." Harper's blood went cold. "What?" "Ji-sung found out they were targeting my family and he handled it. His way. Which means the only reason we've been safe all this time is because my brother has been protecting us from the shadows." Dan Wu's voice was hollow. "And now he wants payment for that protection." "What kind of payment?" "He wants me to consult on a job. Just once. Use my security expertise to help them bypass some systems. He swears it's not violent, just corporate espionage, stealing data from a competitor." Dan Wu looked sick. "But I know how it works. One job becomes 2, becomes 10, and suddenly I'm back in that world, and I can't get out." "Then you say no." "If I say no, he withdraws his protection, and there are still people who remember me. People who'd love nothing more than to make an example of someone who walked away." He met her eyes. "I don't know what to do." Harper stood and paced the kitchen. This was exactly what she'd feared, that the past would never really let him go, that they'd never be truly free. "We run again. We disappear. Eshi can help us." "For how long? We can't run forever. And what kind of life is that for Willow? Always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for someone to find us." Dan Wu's shoulders slumped. "Maybe I should just do the job. Get it over with. Make sure we're protected." "No." Harper's voice came out sharp. "You do this job and you'll be compromised. They'll have proof you worked with them again. They'll own you. Is that what you want?" "Of course not. But what's the alternative?" They argued in harsh whispers for an hour, going in circles. Finally, Harper said, "I need to meet him. Your brother. I need to hear this from him directly." "Absolutely not. I'm not putting you in a room with Ji-sung. He's dangerous. He's also family, and he protected us when he didn't have to. Maybe I can reason with him. Find some other way to repay the debt that doesn't involve dragging you back into crime. Danwoo looked at her like she'd suggested jumping off a bridge. You don't know what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Help me understand so we can figure this out together, instead of you trying to shoulder everything alone, like you always do. She grabbed his hands. We're supposed to be a team now, remember? So let me be your partner in this. He closed his eyes. Okay, I'll arrange a meeting, but I'm staying with you the whole time, and if anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. They met Ji-sung 2 days later at an outdoor cafe during lunch rush. He looked like Danwoo but harder. Same eyes but colder, same build but coiled tighter, like a spring about to snap. He stood when they approached and shook Harper's hand, with perfect politeness. So you're the woman who made my brother go soft, he said, with a slight smile. And you're the man who's trying to drag him back into darkness, she replied evenly. Ji-sung laughed. I like her. She's got fire. He gestured for them to sit. Let's talk business. Let's talk about why you think you own my husband, Harper countered. Ex-husband, technically, though I hear you're working on changing that. He signaled the waiter and ordered coffee for the table. I don't think I own Danwoo. I think I saved his family's life, and that comes with a debt. Simple transaction. Nothing about this is simple. Fair point. Ji-sung leaned back in his chair. Here's the situation. 3 years ago, some idiots decided to threaten you and your daughter to get leverage on my brother. I couldn't let that stand. Family is family even when we disagree about lifestyle choices. He looked at Danwoo. So I eliminated the threat, permanently, and I've been keeping other threats away ever since. We didn't ask you to do that, Danwoo said. You didn't have to. I did it because despite everything, you're my little brother, and I'm not going to watch you lose another family. Something flickered in Ji-sung's eyes. Old pain, old regrets. But protection isn't free in our world. You know that. Harper leaned forward. What if we paid you actual money instead? We could work out a payment plan. I don't need your money. I need Danwoo's expertise for one specific job. Ji-sung pulled out his phone and showed them photos of a corporate building. This company stole technology from one of our legitimate business partners. We want it back. Danwoo helps us get past their security. We retrieve what's ours. Everyone goes home happy. And if we refuse? Ji-sung's expression hardened. Then I can't guarantee your safety anymore. I have enemies too. People who'd love to hurt me by hurting what I care about, which unfortunately now includes you. That's extortion, Harper said flatly. That's reality. He sipped his coffee. Look, I get it. You want out of this world. I respect that. But you can't just erase the past. It follows you whether you like it or not. At least this way you're choosing how to engage with it instead of being a victim. Danwoo was silent, his jaw tight. Harper could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to find a third path that didn't exist. Finally, he said, "Give me 3 days to think about it." You have 2. After that, I assume the answer is no, and I withdraw protection. Ji-sung stood and dropped cash on the table for the coffee. For what it's worth, I really hope you say yes. I'd rather work with you than wonder when someone's going to take you out. He left, and Harper and Danwoo sat in silence. People around them laughed and ate and lived normal lives while their world crumbled again. We can't do this, Harper finally said. We can't let them pull us back in. Then what do we do? She thought about Esha, about the network of people who helped others escape impossible situations. We fight back. We find proof of what Ji-sung's organization is doing, and we give it to someone who can shut them down. We don't run, and we don't surrender. We end this. Danwoo stared at her. That's insane. That's incredibly dangerous. These people kill for less than betrayal. So we're careful. We're smart. We use your knowledge of how they operate and we take them apart from the inside. She grabbed his hand. You said you wanted to be better, wanted to make up for your past. This is how. We protect other families by stopping the organization that's threatening ours. Harper, if we do this and fail, we don't get another chance. They won't just kill us. They'll make it slow. They'll make it public. I know. But I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of waiting for the next threat. I want Willow to grow up in a world where we're actually free. Her eyes burned with determination. Help me do this, please. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, we do it together, but we do it smart and we have an exit plan if things go wrong. They called Esha that night and explained the situation. She was quiet for a long time. What you're proposing is basically suicide. Or justice, Harper said. These people have been terrorizing families for decades. Someone needs to stop them. And you think that someone is a nurse and a reformed security consultant? No offense, but you're not exactly trained operatives. No, but I know their systems, Danwoo said. I know how they communicate, where they keep records, who their weak links are. I spent 2 years inside that machine. I can help dismantle it. Eshi sighed. I know someone, a detective who's been trying to build a case against Ji-sung's organization for 5 years. If you can get him solid evidence, financial records, communication logs, proof of illegal activities, he might be able to move forward with arrests. Can you connect us? I can. But understand, once you start down this path, there's no turning back. Yeah, you'll be painting targets on your backs. We already have targets, Harper said quietly. At least this way we're shooting back. They met Detective Franklin in a parking garage at midnight like characters in a movie. He was older, gray at the temples, with eyes that had seen too much. Eshi says you have inside knowledge of the Ji-sung Lee operation. Danwoo nodded. I used to work for them. I know their structure, their methods, their weaknesses. And you want to help take them down? I want to protect my family. If that means bringing down the organization. Yes. Franklin studied them both. This won't be quick. Building a case takes time, months maybe. Can you maintain cover that long? Danwoo can tell Ji-sung he'll do the job, Harper said. He can use that as an excuse to get close, to access their files and systems. Meanwhile, we feed you everything we find. That makes him an informant. If they discover what he's doing, they won't, Danwoo said with more confidence than he felt. I know how to play the part. I did it for 2 years. And what about you? Franklin turned to Harper. What's your role in this? Backup, support, making sure he doesn't lose himself in the role. She met the detective's eyes. And if something goes wrong, making sure our daughter is protected. They worked out the details over the next hour. Danwoo would agree to do Ji-sung's job, but would drag it out, claiming the security was more complex than expected. During that time, he'd copy files, record conversations, document everything. Franklin would provide them with hidden cameras and recording devices. The Eshi would maintain a safe house where Willow could stay with Amelia if things got dangerous. One more thing, Franklin said before they left. If at any point you want out, if this gets too dangerous or too complicated, you tell me immediately. I'd rather lose the case than lose potential witnesses. Danwoo called Ji-sung the next morning. I'll do your job, one time only, then we're even. Smart choice, little brother. Knew you'd see reason. Ji-sung sounded pleased. Come by the office tonight. We'll go over the details. The office was a legitimate import-export business that served as a front for less legal activities. Dan-woo wore a wire hidden in his watchband. New technology Franklin had provided that was nearly impossible to detect. He walked into Ji-sung's office trying to project confidence he didn't feel. There's my favorite security expert. Ji-sung gestured to a chair. Let me show you what we're working with. He pulled up blueprints on his computer. Detailed schematics of a tech company's headquarters. They have something that belongs to our client. A prototype for new encryption software. We need to retrieve the only existing copy before they patent it. This is corporate espionage, Dan-woo said flatly. You made it sound like simple data theft. It is data theft. Corporate espionage is just the fancy term. Ji-sung zoomed in on the security systems. Can you get us past these defenses or not? Dan-woo studied the screens, his mind working. This was actually perfect. The more complex the job, the more time he'd have to gather evidence. Yeah, I can do it. But it'll take at least 3 weeks to map everything properly. You have 2. Then you'll have a sloppy job that gets people arrested. Your choice. Ji-sung considered this, then nodded. 3 weeks, but I need daily updates on your progress. Fine. I'll need access to your security protocols and communication systems to coordinate properly. Done. Ji-sung pulled out a tablet and logged him into the network. Welcome back to the family business, little brother. Dan-woo took the tablet home and immediately connected it to the encrypted drive Franklin had given him. Files started copying automatically. Emails, financial transactions, operational logs, everything they'd need to build a case. Harper watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. How long until they notice someone's accessing these files? They won't. I set up the tablet to appear like I'm just reviewing security protocols for the job. As long as I don't access anything too sensitive too quickly, it should look normal. Over the next 2 weeks, Dan-woo played his role perfectly. He met with Ji-sung's team, reviewed building schematics, planned entry and exit routes, and every night he came home and copied more files, recorded more conversations, built more evidence. Detective Franklin was thrilled with what they were providing. This is gold, he said during one of their secret meetings. Financial ties to money laundering, proof of extortion, communication with known criminals. We're building a RICO case here. But success made Harper nervous. Things were going too smoothly. When do we pull the trigger? When do you make arrests? Soon. Yet we need just a bit more to guarantee convictions. Franklin looked at Dan-woo. Can you get access to their main server? The one where they keep the really incriminating stuff? Maybe, but that's risky. Ji-sung keeps that locked down tight. It would seal the case, give us everything we need to shut down the entire operation. Dan-woo looked at Harper. She could see the fear in his eyes, but also the determination. I'll try. He told Ji-sung he needed server access to properly coordinate the tech company job. Ji-sung was suspicious, but ultimately agreed, giving him a password with limited permissions. It was enough. Dan-woo spent one terrifying night downloading encrypted files while Ji-sung slept in the next room, certain every creak and footstep meant discovery. When he finally got home at dawn, Harper was waiting. Did you get it? Yeah. But Harper, there's something else on those servers. Something about my father's debt. The one that started all of this. His face was ashen. It was fake. The whole thing was fabricated to recruit me. My father never owed anyone money. Ji-sung lied to get me into the organization. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Everything Dan-woo had sacrificed. Their marriage, years of Willow's life, his own morals and safety, all based on a lie his own brother had told him. Harper watched emotions war across his face. Rage, grief, disbelief. "I'm going to destroy him," Danwoo said quietly. "I'm going to watch this whole empire burn, and I'm going to make sure he knows I'm the one who lit the match." 2 days later, Detective Franklin coordinated simultaneous raids on 17 locations connected to Ji-sung's organization. Harper and Danwoo watched from a safe house as news helicopters broadcast footage of arrests. Ji-sung was led out of his office in handcuffs, his face a mask of shock and fury. Their phones started ringing immediately. Unknown numbers, threats, promises of revenge. Eshi got them new identities again. Just temporary ones until all the arrests were finalized and they could testify safely. The trial took 8 months. Danwoo testified for 3 days, laying out everything he knew about the organization's operations. Ji-sung's lawyer tried to discredit him, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Ji-sung was sentenced to 23 years in prison. Before sentencing, he was allowed to make a statement. He looked directly at Danwoo. "You betrayed your own blood." "You betrayed me first," Danwoo replied. "You lied about father's debt. You manipulated me into that life. Everything that happened after was because of your lie." For just a second, Ji-sung's mask cracked. "I did it because I needed you, because you were always the smart one, the capable one. I thought if I could just get you in, we could build something great together. We could have built something great legally. But you chose crime, and now you'll pay for it." Ji-sung smiled, but it was bitter. "Maybe. But don't think this is over, little brother. I have friends, and they have long memories." After the trial, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Danwoo's security business actually grew because of the publicity. Companies wanted someone who'd taken down a criminal empire, protecting their assets. Harper went back to nursing. Willow started 2nd grade with no idea how close they'd all come to disaster. One night, 6 months after Ji-sung's conviction, Danwoo knocked on Harper's bedroom door. She'd moved into the master bedroom when they'd gotten the larger apartment, and he still slept in the 2nd bedroom. An arrangement that had become increasingly awkward as they'd grown closer through the investigation. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Always." "Will you marry me? Again?" He pulled out a simple ring, not expensive or flashy, just a thin gold band. "I know we're technically still figuring things out, but I love you. I've always loved you. And I don't want to waste any more time pretending we're not building toward this." Harper looked at the ring, at his hopeful, nervous face, at the life they'd fought so hard to protect. "Yes, but on one condition. Anything. No more secrets. Ever. Even if you think you're protecting me, even if it's hard. We tell each other everything. Deal." He slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled him into a real kiss for the first time in 4 years. It felt like coming home, like finding something precious you thought was lost forever. They got married 3 months later in Amelia's garden, with only family present. Willow was the flower girl, and took her job very seriously, making sure every petal was distributed perfectly. It was small and simple, and absolutely perfect. Years later, when Willow asked about her parents' story, Harper would tell her an edited version, about 2 people who loved each other but made mistakes, who hurt each other but learned to forgive, who nearly lost everything but fought to get it back. She left out the parts about criminal organizations and danger and fear. Those were scars they carried privately. But the core truth remained. Love isn't about never falling apart. It's about choosing to rebuild together when everything crumbles. And sometimes the strongest foundations are the ones you construct on top of the rubble of what came before. Thank you for riding on this journey of love with me. I can't appreciate you enough, and as you leave, ensure you like and subscribe so you can come to the next one.